So hey, on Roblox there are a lot of games, and I mean a lot of games. Granted, the vast majority are more or less just empty worlds as 12-year-old was experimenting on and accidentally published, but even then the amount of actual games is still nearly unlimited. So you would assume one of those games would be a Smash-style beat the mother lover out of Dwayne The Rock Johnson simulator featuring the likes of Shulk, Springtrap the Imposter from Among Us, BTS and Sans. Oh, you wouldn't assume that?
Well, too bad it exists.
Right now you're probably asking several questions, like, why does this exist? Why is it on Roblox? Where can I find it? What kind of game is this? I don't know, beats me, link in description and I'll explain that now. This game's description tells us that it's a character-based fighting game featuring iconic characters from everywhere. Pretty much sums it up. The game itself, I admit, looks like a meme, so out of curiosity, you play it. But then there's the twist, it's actually pretty fun. They lure you in with the memes and keep you in by just making it enjoyable. The actual gameplay itself is incredibly inventive. Almost every character has unique moves and movesets, each with their own gimmicks and capabilities. In theory, it should be fun, and in execution, surprisingly enough, yeah, it is. And it's because this game was so fun that I felt the need to make a video on it so people could find it as well. And I also felt the need to make a video on it so we could address the multiple flaws this game possesses. Let's begin with something simple. The majority of the characters in Cross Arena are, for the most part, balanced, and no character in the game is by any means boring to play as. There are certainly characters that are boring to play against, but trust me, we'll get to that later. Unfortunately, there's a distinct minority of abilities that are either completely useless or incredibly ineffective, and this trait can sometimes be shared throughout multiple moves given to one character. Take Thanos, for example. His abilities are good, usable, and pretty fun to use, but one of them are lacking to the utmost degree: the snap. For every 20% of your health lost, the snap gains 1 damage. So to put it into perspective, if you lose as much as possible, 80%, you deal only 4 damage. Granted, if you heal yourself, the damage percent stays, but considering how chaotic this game is, it's likely you won't get past 16 damage before dying, which compared to all his other abilities is pitiful, to say the least, especially when you consider you take 80% of the damage you deal with it. I'm not entirely sure if that's how the snap ability actually works, but all I know is that it's almost the definition of high risk, no reward. I understand there's no real way to balance that kind of ability without it being completely overpowered, but there should be a way to make it at least worth selecting. An idea I had would be to make it damage an opponent for half their current health pool depending on how many opponents there are alive at the time of activation. For example, if it's 1 person, half health, 2 people, quarter health for each, etc, etc, etc. That would make it okay in free-for-all, but great in elimination, and also not overpowered either way. And plus, it's Thanos, you kind of expect him to be at least a little stupid. But Thanos is one of the lucky ones. Several other characters suffer under multiple unusable moves. For example, Skylar's Minecraft is one of the worst characters in the entire game, with abilities that sound like they might work incredibly well in theory, but in execution just kind of underwhelming? I'm not even sure you'd balance him honestly, right now he's just kind of mediocre at best. Talking about Skylar's Minecraft, there are quite a few moves in the game that are incredibly similar or just downright the same. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but when the ability New World is quite literally just the worst version of Nanomachine's son, it feels like there's a very clear and blatant bias. Talking about bias, there's 3 main traits of the best characters in Cross Arena. They're anime, they use swords, and they're male. Does the third point matter? No, not really. But if I pretend that it does, then I infer that the developers are sexist, which might make them add pyra, so yes, it does matter. While some characters struggle with bad abilities, or just a downright bad moveset, almost all of the anime characters either have one move that is incredibly good, or all of their moves are incredibly good. The latter trait is more commonly shared between anime swords fighters, which this game seems to have an abundance of. And look, it's not necessarily bad to have one character or a select few characters stand out above the others, but when they're standing so far above the others that it's almost impossible to beat them without choosing their characters, it gets a little frustrating how boring each match can be when you have an anime swords fighter that's consistently at the top of the leaderboard. I mean, what can you do about this? This guy's in an unbeatable position. Look, I don't want any character to be removed from this game, let alone any ability, but when they're this dominant, it sometimes feels like that's the only option. Fortunately though, this is only free-for-all, and frankly in that mode, winning really isn't a priority. The only real priority is to beat up some poor guy like he's around Tesco's. So it's not too big of a deal if one person is going on cleaning floor with everyone else if you just respawn anyway. Unfortunately, Elim is a mode that exists. Okay, so imagine this. You're playing as, I don't know, the baby. You curb stomp Ninja,
You shut up when I'm talking to you!
barely evade death from Monica, and manage to finish off Moist Critical. You heal up to full, recharge your abilities, and prepare to fight the last guy. And then you realise it's Goku. Elim is one of those modes that's really fun until the guy that was hiding in the back the entire time with an overpowered character comes out and completely decks the guy that would have won had he chosen literally any other character. It's really disappointing when the mode that's supposed to make the game feel less boring and repetitive makes the game feel more boring and repetitive because someone decided no one can have fun today. And I know Elim can be fun because I've played it before without anyone choosing one of the overpowered characters, and I'll tell you what, it's much more fun trying to fight someone that camps heal orbs than trying to fight someone that doesn't even need them to be at full health by the end of the encounter. But Elim can become much, much worse.
What kind of place is this?
90% of the maps in this game, perfectly fine. Construct is a little annoying, but that's just because you can get stuck inside the props sometimes. But then there's just the select few that are just terrible. Fazbear Frights is an example of why this game needs as much space to fight in as possible. It's claustrophobic, more chaotic than usual, and you barely live about 15 seconds before you die to about 20 people who didn't even realise you were in the room until they started walking over Tyler 1's corpse. Another type of map that sucks is one with kill boxes. What's a kill box? Well, it's when you fall off the intended play area and get insta-killed by the game to prevent you from stepping out of bounds. On maps like Tartarus, they're fine because of how big the platforms are. It's pretty rare you actually fall off unless you were fighting right on the edge of one. Though it starts to become an issue when the platform space is far and few between. Take Midnight Channel. It's incredibly easy to get knocked off, and even easier if someone's playing a character like Armstrong. Fortunately, I have a solution to these problems. Perhaps instead of a kill box, a teleport box would be better. What I mean by that is that when someone falls off, instead of killing them, they get teleported to a spawn point. Could help out with a few issues at least, but there's one map where they really could only help a little, and I think everyone knows what I'm talking about. Skywars is the worst map in the entire game. Full stop, no argument. It just sucks. The middle flat part is the only saving grace of the map. Apart from that, the confusing geometry and layout mixed with the side islands that seem entirely unnecessary just makes this map a complete hellhole. Plus, one of the islands you literally can't get off of. I, fortunately, haven't had to be on it before, but the very fact that kind of thing exists on a map that is played in Elim is confusing, to say the least. I just want to reiterate that I in no way hate or even dislike this game. I think it's really good with amazing potential and a passionate team. It's just being held back by a few flaws, namely a few balance issues and almost all of Elim.
You know, for someone who likes this game, you sure as hell love to complain about it.
I mean, well...
is there anything you want added?
Actually, I'm glad you asked, because that leads us into the next part of this video.
Wow, so this is part scripted, huh?
Shut the f***. Personally, one of the characters I'd like to have added would be someone from Star Wars. In particular, maybe Vader, Grievous or Qui-Gon. But apart from that, any character would be welcome. Hell, do Jar Jar Binks for all I care. Apart from that, I think it'd be cool to add, I don't know, Jay Schlatt, Spider-Man, a TF2 character, Jinx, Fortnite Jonesy, Gordon Freeman, Maxwell from Scribblenauts, Stanley from the Stanley Parable, Connor from Detroit Become Human and Master Chief. Just to name a few. The one that I really want to see is Alex Yeek, because it would be incredibly funny to see the direction they take with that. But apart from that, I'm eagerly waiting to see where they go from here. There's a lot of things they could do and I'm willing to see all of them. As long as they're balanced. And not some random anime character. Unless it's Pyro. Oh, and one last thing, if you could remove the copyrighted music from Comeback Stage, I think that's called, that'd be great, because I would really like to make videos on the game without being flooded with yellow dollar signs. Alright, go.
For someone who likes this game, you sure as hell love to complain about it.
That wasn't the tone I was I can't put you with that fucking... Nah, man, I can't do that. You sound like Rory, okay. Should we try that one again?
I'm watching you, Wazowski.